Hi everyone, my name is Nick, and today we're going to talk about my personal picks for top 5 fuzzy houseplants. There are so many unique characteristics to love about your houseplants, but one of my personal favorites is when plants have a nice fuzzy texture to them. So today we're going to talk about 5 of my favorites. And we're going to start off today with, let's talk about one of my favorite peperomias, which is this Peperomia Cana right here. And this is a very felty peperomia, and we have 2 cats in our home, and it's all these felty plants are really good at catching cat hair, so they might look a little dusty. And this one, I do want to also say, I think this one is just a day too tall because I do not remember it leaning like this yesterday, but now today I found it just flopped over. It's right next to my kitchen sink, and it was just flopping into the sink. So I think after I'm done filming this video, I gotta give this one the snips, and I will propagate it. And this is actually a cutting that I am growing off of my mother plant because that one also got a little too big. So I will have to cut this one back as well, and it does propagate very easily. I will just cut it in between 2 leaves. I'll probably remove the lower leaf of the cutting so I can easily set this in some water, and that leaf would probably rot anyway if it was sitting in water. And it will root up in a matter of weeks, and I'll go ahead and pot it up just like I did this one here. But this is a very succulent peperomia. In fact, it could probably take a little bit more light than I'm giving this particular cutting, which is growing next to my kitchen sink, so it's roughly about 6 feet away from a window. But if I did put this one in, or at least close to a window, it would get some really nice blue, silver, or glaucous color to it. So this is a little bit more green than some of the Peperomia incana you might see on Instagram, or if you're in a botanical garden, because this is one I will see at botanical gardens just kind of scrambling across the floor as ground cover. And it's really quite beautiful, specifically when it has that bluish silver color to the leaves. So this one can take a little bit more light, and you would water accordingly. So as it's a more succulent peperomia, and peperomias in general don't like to be overwatered, so I'm not watering this peperomia that often. In fact, I can kind of feel it in the foliage, which, as I said, this is a more succulent peperomia. So if I kind of give these leaves just a little bit of a squeeze, I can feel if they are very succulent, it doesn't need a drink. And if it starts to lose that succulence and get a little bit more flimsy, that would signify that this plant could use a little bit of water. So that's kind of how I go off this one. Specifically, since it's right next to the sink, if I'm just, washing my dishes, I might just feel the leaves, and if I see that it needs a drink, I'll just give it a little squirt with the dish hose. Okay, so here's another peperomia that I want to talk about. This is Peperomia Fuzzy Mystery, and as the name suggests, this is a pretty fuzzy peperomia. In fact, every inch of this plant is just covered in fuzz. It's so fuzzy, so the name is not lying. It's not as fuzzy or felted as the Peperomia incana is in texture and feeling it, but I would be lying if I didn't say this plant is totally fuzzy. It's just covered in fuzz. And I really love the foliage of this plant in particular. It's got some really beautiful rusty brown color in the center of the leaves, and some really nice venation, and then it kind of works its way out to just a standard bright green, which I just really appreciate. This one's getting a little overgrown. It's what happens when you have your plants for a little bit of time. I haven't even had this one for a tremendous amount of time. I think I've been growing this one in my home for only about a year, if even at this point, but I'm just giving it prime conditions, which is directly underneath a grow light, and I am watering it probably once a week. But when it dries out, once again, similar to the Peperomia incana, I can feel in the foliage when it does need a drink. But such a fun plant. Both of these peperomias I gotten from Steve's Leaves, who is known for selling some really out there peperomias and has a really nice selection. But these 2 in particular are the fuzzy peperomias that I grow in my home that I absolutely love. There are definitely some other fuzzy peperomias out there as well, but these 2 I think are my favorites. Moving on, let's talk about this one next. So this is actually a Hoya, but this is a Hoya coronaria, and this one was actually pointed out to me by one of my friends. And the reason she pointed this out to me, and she actually gave this to me as a gift, is because she said this is the Peperomia incana of Hoyas, and she knows how much I love my Peperomia incana. It's one of my favorite peperomias. But she was not lying. This one almost looks pretty much like the Peperomia incana. Let me just pull it up real quick so you guys can kind of see. They do look very similar, but it does really strike that note, and I'm just a really big fan of it. You can see some new growth coming off right here. This is actually some cuttings that she had given to me off of her plant that I'm now growing out. But it is just, it's so fuzzy. I would almost say it's fuzzier than the Peperomia Cana. So this one really, I'm such a big fan of this, but it's been really easygoing. It's been pretty easy to root up, and it's been putting off this new growth for me. So can't really speak on its care entirely because I've only been growing this one in my home for just a matter of months. But yeah, it's so cool. I had to talk about it today because it really does strike that Peperomia Cana note, as I mentioned, and I just, every time I'm walking by this plant, I do have to give it a feel. It's so phenomenal. And another one that has really taken my home by storm in the past year are Epicias. I got into Epicias because I tried out a different grower through my broker. If you guys watch my ordering plants for urban jungle video, I was ordering plants through my Florida broker, and a broker is somebody who goes around to a bunch of different nurseries in their area, and they have an availability list of all of the plants that those places have to offer. And one of these growers in particular is known for growing their African violets and their peperomias, and amongst an assortment of their plants that I had gotten were some Epicias, and I had never really seen them before, and there was just so many colors. So I was kind of taken back, and I had to try out a few of them at home. I think I took home a pink one and a green one, and like a bluish, it was like a bluish green one. They call that one Silver Skies. If you're familiar with Epicias, it doesn't really matter, but I was just so, my eyes were opened to Epicias. I hadn't really heard about them before. So, of course, in my following orders, I had to try out some fuller sized Epicias, and I just love getting them at the store because there's so many varieties. And you don't usually order just a box of one type of Epicia. You usually get like 4 or 5 varieties at least in your assortment. So this one, I can't even tell you what variety this is. I'll try to do some research and include the name on screen. But these are just such fuzzy plants. And I should say, as I mentioned, the grower is who grows these, not this one in particular, but the one that I was getting at work, grows African violets. These are actually very closely related to African violets. So this is in a family of plants referred to as gesneriads, and that is exactly what African violets are a part of as well. So these do flower, and they are known for their flowers. I believe the common name for this plant is flame violet because although their flowers do come in many colors, most of them, or the most prevalent ones I would say, are red. So the flowers do kind of stand out over the foliage, hence the name. But this is just such a fun plant to grow. It trails, it scrambles. There's so many different colors. The one thing I will say about these is they don't like cold water and they don't like cold drafts. So you don't want to get cold water on the leaves similar to African violets. It's okay if you get warm water on the leaves, but I wouldn't necessarily have sun pouring onto the plant if you are going to be watering this plant willy-nilly from above with warm water, because I think that would still damage the plant. And they also don't like drafts. According to my growers, these don't like it below 60 degrees, and that is like, that's a warm temperature. I feel like I'm happy with 60 degrees, but apparently Epicias do not like it below 60, so I can't say for sure, but I will take their word for it. So I have had these, from experience I can say I've had these die from slight drafts. So if you live in a cold, drafty house or area, I wouldn't recommend Epicias, but they are just so much fun for all of the variety that they have to offer. I love the way they grow, and they don't require a lot of light, so they're great for a lower light area of the home. In fact, this one I've recently been growing on my shelf, which is above my dining room table. I think it really looks phenomenal there, and it's been growing pretty well, putting off a little bit of new growth since I have moved it. And I have one more plant to talk about today. I think I talked about these in a recent video, but I'm going to talk about them again. But this is a different variety. This is Primulina, or Asian violets. So these are also another type of gesneriad, which is what the Episcia belongs to, or the Gesneriaceae family is what the more botanical Latin term would be. But this is a Primulina yungfuensis, and this is such a beautiful Primulina. If I get a little bit closer, you can see the like enigmatic foliage pattern. And then of course, not only do I love fuzzy plants, but I really love plants that have different colors of foliage on the backside of the leaves. And this one does not disappoint with some really beautiful purple texture, or I'm sorry, not texture, purple undersides to the leaves. So I'm just always just taken back by this plant. This is a rather new one for me. I actually only got this one this month, and I've just fallen head over heels for it. I think it's just so beautiful. I've been really appreciating Primulina's and other gesneriads lately in my home. I think it's something that I just really don't think I'm appreciating enough. Gesneriads and begonias are two types of plants in particular that I want to try out a little bit more in my home this year. So you'll probably be seeing me picking up a few more of those. And this one, Primulina yungfuensis, was one of the first ones that I had picked up. But I just am head over heels for not only the top sides of the leaves, but the undersides of the leaves. This plant just has so much to love about it. And of course, the foliage is very, very fuzzy. So every time I walk by this plant, I just have to give it a moment and give it a nice little pet because it is so soft. Just like the Episcia, this does not like cold water on the leaves, so I do water this with lukewarm or warm water. But as I do grow a decent amount of plants in my home that don't like cold water on their leaves, or cold water in general. None of us you don't want to shower in cold water. I want to shower in at least warm water. So I do want to give my plants lukewarm water as well. And you can shock your plants if you water them with cold water. So just because of that, knowing that I tend to water all of my plants with at least lukewarm water or warm water, not hot, not cold, but to each their own. Definitely don't do hot water. But at least when it comes to your Asian violets or your gesneriads, I would highly recommend watering them with lukewarm or warm water. But that's gonna about do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Just to recap, my favorite fuzzy plants are Peperomia incana, Peperomia fuzzy mystery, Hoya coronaria, Episcia cupreata, there are many variations of it, and I just showed you guys one today, and Primulina yungfuensis, although I do really love Primulinas, and I'm getting really into Primulinas right now, as well as some other types of gesneriads. Thank you guys so much for joining me today as I talked about my favorite fuzzy plants. If you don't already, follow me on Instagram at Philly Foliage, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in my next video. Have a great time!